On occasion, I've used the word meddling. I say, don't meddle. Don't meddle with what arises in your mind based on your misunderstandings. If you don't understand, then slow down, hold still. Even someone who's not a meditator could do a little bit of that. But just slow down, wait. They used to, in the cartoons, they used to have the character that was about to lose his temper count to 10. Am I the only one here that is that old? Probably. So the idea is to hold off a little bit. Don't meddle. Don't get into your mind stream and fiddle around with things with guesswork. The reason I say that is not that you couldn't strike it rich or get lucky or whatever the phrase may be, but probably not, because the way the mind looks, not to a neurologist, not to a psychologist, not to a psychiatrist or any other ist, but to someone who has spent a long time looking at the mind itself, actually looking at it, sitting down, holding still, and watching what it does. I'm not saying that people who do it in different ways they have their value too. People who are a psychiatrist, therapists, neurologists have a different area of that they work with, and have their successes and failures. But as a meditator, I say don't meddle. Don't meddle with it. Don't monkey around with what is happening in your mind. Not easy, because the process of doing that, if you're using meditation as an awareness practice, as a way of seeing how the mind works, how you're functioning, quite a bit of what you're going to be doing is witnessing, seeing how much you keep fiddling around with everything, meddling with it, pushing. I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, it shouldn't be this way, it should be that way. No, that's not right, that can't be right. Little commentaries and they're all in the form of what? They're kind of mimicking what happens naturally. The natural arising of consciousness has to do with thoughts arising. That's what they come. You don't create thoughts. Somewhat. But the main thing that happens with thinking is just arises, just like sounds arise in your environment, just like smells, odors, sounds, sights, feelings arise. So when I say don't meddle, I'm saying insofar as you can. I mean, if we're in pain, if we're having difficulty, if we're worried about something, worried about the outcome of something, quite often we'll, based on our limited knowledge, which I call partial evidence, we'll oh, this might work. I'll try this. I'll try that. And you might not even think that. You might just proceed to push and pull. Push, aggression, pull, passion, shut down on, let's just turn it off. I just won't pay any attention to that. Well, don't think about it. I once had heard that Zen master in, Minneapolis, Katagiri Roshi, once gave advice to someone when they were talking about how difficult their life was, how they're having this or that thing happening, things are bad feelings and so on. He just said, well, don't think about it. And there's something that rings kind of true about that. I guess maybe more so to a meditator than someone who doesn't meditate. Someone who doesn't meditate doesn't understand the complete silence and stillness that can arise, if you want to call it an arising, in meditation practice. Someone who understands that may be able to bring some of that stillness or silence to the busy, discursive, speedy mind. And maybe not. Maybe the awareness has to do with how you can't seem to do that. That's still awareness. Quite often the misunderstanding is that we should accomplish something, we should do something, we should do this and that should work, or we should stop doing that and so that will help this or help that. All relative truth. It's also called partial truth. And so the title of this evening's Dharma talk is, what is it?
Does the teacher meddle?
Yes, does the teacher meddle? So I wanted to give you a little bit of a preamble, because I've been had that come up with several people who will say, well, if I say this or say that, say, well, isn't that meddling? Aren't you meddling with my life? So, and perhaps, I'm not saying they couldn't be, it might be happening that way. But if you've asked someone to function as, in particular, on a path of awareness and path of meditation and a path of the Dharma, which means truth, then your teacher, the person you have asked, given permission to function as your teacher, he or she may look at you and say, don't do that, stop that, go do this, start doing this, do less of this, do more of that. I guess you could say that it's meddling, but if it really feels like meddling, maybe you should fire that teacher. Maybe you should get another teacher. Maybe you should not have any teacher. I don't know for sure. But if you've asked somebody to function that way, you should give them the benefit of the doubt. I didn't say, and I won't say, you have to believe them or trust them or put all of your passwords in their donation box. But you could give them the benefit of the doubt if they're reasonable. You're talking to them about what's happening, and they say, stop doing this and start doing this, or don't go there, don't go here, don't do this. Some kind of really direct situation. If you're going to continue to have them function as a teacher, then you probably should do that. And of course, quite often what this can get into is when teachers who are not really true teachers, but are charlatans, as my teacher Trungpa Rinpoche once referred to people who pretended to know what they were talking about, tried to convince people that they had some kind of special knowledge. There's a few of those around even today. And that's why you should look very carefully, very closely at anyone who possibly could function as a teacher. If you feel like, I need a teacher, I need someone to help me with this deal. And it needs to be somebody who has some idea about something that I don't, or more experience with it or something. And I'm not sure how that's going to show up. It might show up just as your instinct. I've had people come to me and just say right away, I know you're my teacher. I know you're my teacher. And I push back a little bit and say, are you really sure? I may push back more with some people than with other people. And then other people may, in the situation that I'm in as a Dharma teacher, may not really ask you formally to be a teacher, but still want your help. But they want to just decide how much of your help. They don't really want you. They don't really want to give you permission. They just want to kind of check in with you and say, like, hey, Sokuzan, you got any tips? Tips of what? You got any, tips about meditation, about mindfulness? I say, I could give you some tips. Here's the main tip. Meditate a lot. So getting back to the whole charlatan idea, you'll really know if you really look closely at watch what any teaching person might do. Listen to how they handle everything in their life. And talk to people who are their students and see how things are going in that area. And the minute you hear any propaganda about anything, get the hell out of there. The minute you hear any promises about anything, leave. That's a tip. Why do I say that? It's because a spiritual path is not a mundane path. It is a path of awareness. It's a path of trust. What do you trust? Trust yourself. I would never say, I don't know, maybe I've said a few times if I've been really trying to get control of somebody, just trust me. I might have said that. Probably not very much. Usually I say, give me the benefit of the doubt. Give me a chance here. Just take what I'm talking about here. Check this out. Work with this a little bit. It might be something like going to retreat for 10 days. Check this out. Go do this. One person I would say go into retreat. Another person I would say no, don't go into retreat. It's not something we need to do right now. So from the point of view of ego or self-centeredness, if you're on the spiritual path and someone, your teacher, someone you've asked to function as your teacher, seems like they're being too nosy or they're meddling or something, maybe they are. Maybe they could be. You would need to look at that and see if that's what's happening. On the other hand, your self-centeredness might just be concocting stories so that the self-centeredness of the ego doesn't get exposed. Sometimes we get a little shaky if somebody's looking at us too closely, or if somebody is encouraging us to do something that's going to, a practice that may expose us more to what's going on. Questions? Sheldon?
Can you give us an example of what propaganda would sound like?
Yeah, I could a little bit. I mean, just promises that, oh, well, this is the best kind of meditation. All the other meditations are, this is the kind that will really work. You need to do a mantra. You need to pay me $2,000 so I can give you the mantra. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be some money exchanging hands, but business transaction part is it's a little fishy. This doesn't mean that if there's a seminar going on or a retreat program that takes a lot of money to set up and buying food and everything, that you might not have to pay some kind of a fee. But it probably isn't going to be real outlandish. You might have to pay for the transportation for the teacher or for the people to set the whole thing up. But when you hear where somebody's actually getting quite wealthy over that. And again, this doesn't mean that somebody shouldn't have a nice car to drive. So we can go overboard. Jeff?
Does personality play much of a role in the teacher-student relationship? Like, even though the teacher may be fully qualified, is it possible for he or she to do better with certain types of people than others?
Of course.
Is that kind of normal?
Of course. Yeah. You may a teaching person may be fully qualified, or even to take it a step further, maybe realized. In other words, they realize what the Buddha was talking about. They are not separate from what the Buddha taught, which means everything is dependently risen. If someone has realized this, they are no longer an individual. I'm not saying they don't function. They don't go to the bathroom and eat and brush their teeth. But I'm saying that the fundamental situation is not, they're not functioning out of some kind of self-centered, what's in it for me kind of thing. They totally give, but they do it in a way that is so ordinary that there's no performance involved. You can, unless you're watching them very close, they'll look like any other selfish person. Wait, you follow me?
I think so.
So if you had somebody whose personality was very flashy or flowery or charismatic, I guess would be the word, that person may be a good teacher, may be a great teacher, may be realized, may not be. The combinations, they could be a nobody. A person could be a complete unknown person, be realized, and just be a gardener, and just not have the causes and conditions, the karma that causes them to teach. They may be willing to teach, but they're never asked. And since they don't promote themselves, it just doesn't show up. Is that helpful, or is there some deeper part of that?
Yeah, that's helpful. Also, the personality thing, even though someone may be realized, is each person kind of being different. Is it important to, without relying on selfish preferences really, but to find someone that you kind of feel there's a certain thing there.
Well, sure, yeah, you resonate. You have, I meet a lot of people that are practitioners that have no interest in what I have to say, and I don't look at that as some kind of, something that's wrong. We just don't have. We're not on the same frequency. They need some other person to help them. We're just not tuned in. So it's really quite variable. And then there's some people who seem to have, a lot of public kind of stuff going on where they just show up more people gravitate towards them. Even though you might have one person that is awake. But my teacher, Kobunchina Roshi, was pretty much unknown during his life. There hasn't been a book published by him. He wouldn't let anyone publish a book. As the Zen teacher passed away not too long ago, lived to be over 100. Joshu Sasaki Roshi also would not. I think in 1974, some of his students got together, took some of his talks, and published a book called Buddha is the Center of Gravity. And he blew his stack over it because they did it behind his back and thought he would just love it. Had pictures of him floating in a pond and being a really swanky guru. He didn't like it. He was upset about it because he wanted, I don't know exactly what he wanted, but it appeared like he wanted to have a direct relationship with people. That was more important than having a lot of people gravitate towards this book. But, I think it's different for everyone. Where Trungpa Rinpoche came here, and his stated goal was to transplant the Buddhist teachings in Western soil, which he did quite a bang-up job of. There's literally thousands and thousands of Shambhalians all over the world. And that's a form of Buddhism based on the Kagyu tradition, based on the Dzogchen and Nyingma traditions, and based on the ancient lineage of Shambhala, which he created and modified it so it interfaced with Western culture. So he was he was extremely charismatic, and it didn't look all that cute. He was not very tall and kind of roly-poly and Tibetan and had irregular teeth, and it was extremely funny. And I was terrified of him when I met him. But the terror came from anytime I would look at him, I felt like he could read my mind. Of course, he wasn't reading my mind. He just was present, and I wasn't. But when I would be around him, I could feel how not present I was. And that was scary. A lot of people were around him and weren't afraid of him at all. But I was That was an especially bad case. Further questions?
Sandra has a question.
Sandru in New York City,
Yes.
Brooklyn.
He says, asks, this is something I've struggled with. How can things arise? Doesn't that imply a continuity that isn't real?
Yeah, it's both real and unreal. That's why it's so difficult to understand. Both real and unreal. The example I'm always using is the alligator in the kitchen. You know, if I say there's an alligator in the kitchen, I should come up with another image. It's getting kind of boring. Let's say there's a giant rhinoceros. How's that? Blue one in the kitchen, but it's really tiny. It's giant relative to other rhinoceri, but to itself, it's very, very tiny. So when other ones are around, it's really big. But when no one's around, it's very tiny. This is not confusing to the rhinoceros at all. It's totally in, and I'm sure Sandra's hanging on my every word here. He's been here before. There he is. And so what am I saying? Of course, I'm saying that we all have some kind of a picture, maybe little images, and those of us who aren't so visual still have a strong feeling of presence there with that imaginary rhinoceros, animal, whatever. So it's both real in that we're all having some kind of an experience of it, and it's unreal in that you can't find that, you can't locate it. It's there, but it's outside space and time. It's always there. From now on, 20 years from now, if you remember this, you'll see that. The rhinoceros. Who created it? Me or you? Or both of us? And was it even created? Is it even there? Did it arise? Did it just appear? Was it always there? And I just pointed it out? Consciousness, consciousness, awareness, awareness, awareness. I'm not saying we can't do it with the mind. We can't think of this. We can't read Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, or Kierkegaard, or Jean-Paul Sartre, or all of the Dzogchen teachings, or all of the teachings of Mahamudra. I'm not saying we can't go into all kinds of different ways and find all kinds of ideas about things, but the very best thing that you could do as a human being, every single one of us, is sit down, hold still, and look at your mind. If the body's moving, I'm not saying you can't learn something from yoga or ballet or acrobatics or anything. Of course, anytime you're working with body-mind relationship, there's going to be an expanded awareness around what that is that you might not be able to put your, no pun intended, your finger on. But if you just hold still, everything still, and watch what continues to move, a kind of understanding begins to arise over what we call time, a duration of time, that you can't locate that anywhere. It has no location spatially. And yet it is the very foundation of what the word location points to. If I'm talking in circles, then get off. I don't mean get off. I mean, don't go in circles. Don't go anywhere. Another question? This is Sandra again?
Well, in a minute, but this is from Ethan
Oh, Ethan.
in Brooklyn.
Ethan, I'm not going to. No, okay. I'll take Ethan's question.
He says, I am in my kitchen right now.
Yeah, and there's
And
no
there's
rhinoceros.
no rhinoceros.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
So am I doing this wrong?
You're doing this both correctly and incorrectly. Yes, thank you. It is not to. And so the rhinoceros, which way is the rhinoceros facing, Ethan? That's something that we, amazingly, if I make a suggestion like that and we all see something, it's interesting that you can go, everyone can give some kind of a description of what they're seeing, and it'll all be different. And I'll say, well, I didn't tell you to do that. I didn't tell you to have them facing this way. I didn't tell you that it was going to be that size. And I didn't say it was, I said it was in our kitchen, not your kitchen. And it goes on and on and on. It's so very, how can I emphasize this without yelling? Complicated. It is so extremely complicated. We need to simplify it. When I say simplify it, I don't mean simplify what is so complicated. I'm saying simplify our approach to it. As Suzuki Roshi said on the cover of his book and in his teachings back in the 60s, Zen mind, beginner's mind, Zen heart mind, the heart mind, this deep, deep consciousness that we are fundamentally, this deep consciousness, find it. It's not a concept. We have to use one to point to it. Find that and use the concept beginner. Just be a beginner. Never, you don't have to get anywhere, because if you get somewhere, then you have relative truth stacked up. You have a house of cards. On the one hand, you actually start to get somewhere conceptually. And then you meet other people who are getting somewhere conceptually, and you compare notes. If you do enough of that, you'll get a PhD. Nothing wrong with PhDs. Did I ever get a PhD? No, I guess I didn't. I could have. I thought about it when I was very young. And I thought, no, because what they're teaching me is not what I want to learn. So I just started studying on my own. And also, I know I'm not very smart, so not as smart as my daughter, who has a PhD. What was that in zoology?
Specializing in rhinoceros.
Specializing in rhinoceros. She's a psychologist. So back to Ethan's kitchen.
Yes,
He has another follow-up question.
the rhinoceros is facing the wall.
This guy's a stand-up comedian. Did any of you meet him when he was here? Yeah. He's also an opera singer, but I'm all through bragging about him. That's all you're getting, Ethan. I don't want any more questions from that guy.
How about some?
I'll do Sandra's. Yeah.
Okay.
He has another PhD.
So,
MD. Oh yeah, he's an MD. That's even better. I mean, it's less letters, but it's better.
he asked, and
Yes.
this ties into his previous question, does that imply continuity that isn't real? And then he says, or asks, so the teacher can't really meddle, can she?
No, she can't.
That would pretend we were apart.
Yeah, no, she can. The person who is functioning out of reality, which is not, or who is enlightened, and it's not an experience. The person who functions out of that, there's no way they can possibly meddle, because they are functioning like a tuning fork. They're just with resonating with everything, just like when that drum in the back of the Zendo, at the Doan seat, when that drum is struck, sometimes when the conditions are just right, and here, this window over here will resonate with that drum. What is that? They're on the same frequency or something, but it's like that drum resonates, the sound waves go out, and the window somehow understands that or resonates with it.
That's all so far on the line. I have a
Yes,
question though.
Certainly.
Sometimes it seems that a teacher gives a teaching that is very abrasive to the student, and can it be misinterpreted? Can a teaching be misinterpreted by the student?
Sure.
And what would you ask them to do about that?
Yes, who to do?
Well, the student, if there seems to be a misunderstanding.
It would depend on the student. There are some students that misunderstand in this situation with students that I have and actually leave. There is no, without pursuing them, there's nothing you can do about it. They're just gone. There's a misunderstanding. And you could also say that, that they're their time with you is over with, and it's time for them to move to another situation to learn from another teacher, or maybe not practice anymore the rest of their life. There's no way to know how that functions. The only thing that I do as a Dharma teacher, as long as I can, is to function as a teacher for those who give me permission. And it isn't like I don't have hundreds of students. I got a couple dozen. And I don't want hundreds. That would cause serious damage, having hundreds of students. I would have to start cloning myself. Which one? Bailey?
Is it not meddling because you have permission?
That's part of it, yeah. The person has given, even though they don't really know what they're giving it permission for. On the other hand, you check with them. Are you want this? You want these teachings? Do you want to understand this? And they might ask you about, well, what is it? And it means it's going to be hard. You're going to have to come up against your resistance in the form of fear, more than likely, some kind of fear. And the teaching person, he or she, might already see that before you even start experiencing yourself. They see the way in which you're going to have trouble, and they're just waiting for you to have it. And then you start having it, and then they still don't give up on you. They wait, and then if you get permission, then you continue to help them with that. So they may go in and out of dark areas and come back, and then say, "Oh, I'm better now. I'm doing better. What should I do?" And you might say, "Well, you should go into retreat, or you should move here." Quite often if somebody asks me, you want to be careful what you ask. I knew better than to ask Trump or Rinpoche what to do. I'd stay away from that guy. Because all he would have had to have done is tell me what to do, and I would have done it. And you could say, well, isn't that some kind of a, guru worship or something like that? I can see where it might be looked on that way, but I was so resistant to authority, so independent and everything, just completely full of myself. And I might add that I'm still full of myself. Understanding ego or transcending ego does not mean the ego goes anywhere. This is part of the difficult area here where you actually do need help, because there is the illusion or the understanding that you will get rid of your crazy, self-centered, narcissistic identity. But what happens is you see that it's unreal. So what sees that it's unreal? Is it the ego that sees that it's unreal? No, that's narcissism. What sees that it's unreal is wisdom. We don't have any other name for it. And it's an open dimension of being without a solid center, without a solid self.
You don't have permission. Is it still not meddling?
No, it's if the teacher doesn't have permission, teacher should mind his or her own business. They don't have. It should always be mutual. You should stay out of other people's business. That's the other kind of mindfulness. Mind your own business, and especially if you're a teacher. Don't. Sometimes some teachers tend to try to convince somebody they should do this or that or the other thing, and it's sometimes it's tempting because you see, well, if I could just get them to do such and such, this would be a helpful thing for them. But you have to back out and trust their intelligence. That they'll do what they need to do. They might go, so they might move on. You might never see them again. Go ahead. I can see another question arising because you kind of licked your lips. Your eyes went up like that.
I had it and now I lost it. If the teacher isn't meddling, what are they doing?
You mean if they have permission? they're functioning as your wisdom mind. Wisdom mind isn't separate from anybody, so they're talking to you, they're looking at you, and then they're functioning in a way that you may think was incorrect or abrasive or something, but you've given them permission, so they start functioning that way. But then if you say, I don't want you to be my teacher anymore, and the way I say this, if you ask me to be your teacher, and I sometimes forget to do this, but I say, you need to ask me to leave. And this way it makes it very clear. I would never refuse anybody. If someone says, I don't want you to be my teacher anymore, I want to go study with the Dalai Lama, which would be a bad move. And I would say, I know stuff too. And they say, but I really like him. I met him. I really want to go study with him. And I might shed a few tears, but I would say, go right ahead. Good luck. Sounds like a good move. And you know, there's no being silly about it, but there's no argument. If the teaching person is really interested in the welfare of his or her students, you won't meddle or interfere without permission. And sometimes if it's confused, sometimes it's confusing whether you've got permission or not, because sometimes people say, no, you're my teacher. But then you can see that they're having doubts about that. So then you just need to stay away, stay out of it, let them work it out. I have people tell me that they're my teacher, but they don't do as they're told. So are they bad students? No. They're just slow. So
I think you may have said before that other Sangha members are actually your teacher as well as
Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Yes.
So, and specifically in the community of the Sangha, sometimes Sangha members will involve themselves with other members of the Sangha, thinking that things need to be corrected or changed or something like that. Is that a teacher meddling?
That's awareness. They're not your teacher. They're Sangha. They're your Dharma brother, Dharma sister. You know, they're not functioning. You're not giving them permission to function as your teacher. On the other hand, there's someone who is a companion, a companion on the path, a companion. So you'll notice some Sangha members you seem to really resonate with, they're really helpful, or other Sangha members their kind of confusion is kind of abrasive or difficult. So the interesting thing about Sangha is like a cross section of humanity. You have people that would never, it isn't like the Polish National Alliance. It's not like, it's not like your crew, where everybody's kind of in the same, or your bowling league, or everybody's, they're really a cross section of people. Each person just happens to be someone who is trying to understand deeply who they are and what it means to be really sane. Sometimes we just get tired of looking at the world. It's just so nuts. Highly, highly intelligent people fighting with each other. It's tiring. And one of the things that makes it tiring is the highly intelligent people who are fighting with each other actually are making sense. We're not saying that it doesn't make sense to take a political position. A couple of them are a little crazy. I won't go into those. But there's ideas that are actually carry some weight. They make sense. It's when the warfare starts coming up that the screens start dropping around the sense fields, and we start to go into our internal projection about what is happening out here. If you're living out here in the world, you will not know what's going on. I'm not saying you won't have concepts about it, but the fundamental situation that's going on, you won't know. You won't really know what's going on if you see the world clearly, because it's way too complicated. The causes and conditions that are rising make any comment about what this person's doing or that person or this war, that the basic thing that we all agree on, probably in this room anyway, is war is bad. Drone planes are bad. No, it's terrible. So, but what do you do about that? How do you work with that? How do you carry picket signs? Do you what do you do with that? Well, if you talk to me, if I'm functioning as your teacher, I say sit on the cushion. You are, not to be romantic about it, but you are the world. You're not separate from the world. This is the actual truth, the ultimate truth, but it has to be realized. Until you realize it, it's just one more relative statement. And that's why I say, as a Dharma teacher, as someone who has studied the Buddha Dharma and is endeavoring to teach it to others, I say, sit down and find out who you are, what this is, what it really is with you. And then you may go out and join the Marine Corps. I don't know. Or you may do something totally different. You may carry picket signs against, or protest signs against fracking, or you may not. It's hard to say. But coming out of your awareness is what we're trying to do. We're trying to operate out of our awareness. Even in here, in our Sangha, in our community, trying to operate out of the awareness of what's happening, not the right and wrong. The right and wrong, there is a right, there is a wrong. We're not saying that. There is painful, there is pleasurable, there is all these polarities. But to dive in and try to clamp down on one and get rid of the other one it's insanity. Even if it has incredible logic behind it. It's crazy. Further questions? Yeah. So.
When you say you won't know what is going on.
Yes. Please ask this question.
Are you talking about not believing your opinion about what's going on? Is that the same as not knowing what's going on?
That's close. To actually have an opinion and know that it has no half-life. To actually have something arise and know that it's just that. It's just that arising. You can actually operate out of awareness, function out of awareness without locking down on an opinion or an idea or a right or wrong. It's possible to do that. If you operate out of that, that means you've actually realized it. Because otherwise, we're just operating out of relative truth. It's right, it's wrong. What do you think about what I'm thinking about what you're thinking? I don't know. What do you think about what I'm thinking about what you're thinking I'm thinking? Well, I asked you first. That's true. Let's have some more coffee. You can't get a relative fix on it, because if you do, it always involves the opposite. Anytime you have this, you're going to have that, unless you transcend that. And if you transcend it, then there's no more warfare.
Another follow-up question from Sandru.
Yes, Sandra.
He asks, you can't meddle because there's no space?
Talking about the teacher meddling, is that?
Yeah.
Sandra, you need a spanking.
And then another question.
Hold it, let me work on that first. That's a way of talking about it that I would have to say that there's something to that. There is no space and there's no movement. But I'm not sure that's what he's asking about. He's a psychiatrist, so I have to be very careful about answering him. It would have me locked up. Good move. The idea of when I'm responding to the idea of what Sandra's talking about is the idea of space, no space. So he's actually going, the other way of saying that there's no meddling because there's so much space. That would be the way I would say it. So when he said it the opposite way, then that's also true. Not two. More questions from Ethan? No, Ethan's given up. He's wrestling with the rhinoceros.
And Sandra's having trouble with autocorrect, so he says just forget all this.
So be careful with autocorrect. End up saying things. Oh, I didn't mean that. Bad.
Oh, here's
Siri.
one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
We are exactly complete.
What is?
That's his
Who
question.
said that?
Sandra.
Yes, yeah. It's a relative way of saying it that is complete. The Dzogchen teacher, Longchenpa in the 14th century talked about the great perfection, seeing with your wisdom eye, to struggle first, to live and study the teachings, all of the different ways of talking about the realization of the Buddha, the understanding of the provisional teachings, the first turning, second turning, third turning teachings of the Buddha, and eventually, sooner or later, see that there isn't anything to fix. But what this actually is complete perfection. To step out of that perfection into some kind of relative truth and go to war with something is a misunderstanding of your true nature. Yeah.
Perfect in what way?
Perfect in that it's not imperfect. There's no flaw. It's perfect. It's just we have to use some relative word, so we're going to use that one. Longchenpa. I'm not sure what the Tibetan word is. If you realize it, if you see it, then you see that plus and minus are not separate from each other. That's how they get their separation, is from the other one. So it's called non-dual, the ancient Indian teaching of non-duality, Advaita. Dvaita means dual, Advaita means non-dual. So teaching has been around for a long time. When it appears in the theistic tradition, it's called, being one with God or one with the Godhead, those kinds of things. So it happens in different traditions. Some kind of expression of that could happen. But I don't know about all that, so other than what I just said. Further questions? Further questions here from people who haven't asked anything?
So,
Stephanie.
how do you carry a picket sign in awareness and not about, so it's not about being right?
Yeah, if you were to carry a protest sign, picket sign or something, trying to promote this idea against those ideas, or however you want to, I think it's possible to do that. But usually what happens is someone might see that there's other things they could be doing. And so don't misunderstand. I'm not, when I see people protesting bad water in Flint, Michigan, or against the governor, or any kind of protest that's going on with signs, Black Lives Matter. I'm happy that people are operating in ways that are trying to, insofar as they're able to understand what's going on and do what they think they should do. So there's a kind of validity in that. I'm not ready to do this. We need to do this. But if you're in this room, probably, not necessarily, probably you need to train your mind, either now or later, either now or next week, now, next year, 3 years from now, another lifetime. And I'm not kidding. You might hear it in this life, do it in another lifetime. And no, I don't believe in future lifetimes. But no questions about that? Go ahead.
If you don't believe in future lifetimes, why do you talk about them all the time?
Because I know that you disbelieve them or you believe them. You either believe them or disbelieve them. Which one is it? First thought, best thought. Go ahead. Jump in.
Not sure.
Whoa. Whoa. Is that transcendent knowledge or is that just insecurity?
I'm still not sure.
So what I'm promoting here, saying or commenting on is I'm saying it is possible for any one of us here to function in a way where you neither believe nor disbelieve anything. You don't have to take a stand on anything. You can function out of complete awareness. To do that is to begin to wean yourself off from the false concept of time that drives us all crazy. I don't have enough time. I should have done this in the past. I should do this in the future. I need to get this done. To believe that there's a past, to believe that there's a future. I somehow have a feeling that didn't click with you.
I think so.
Okay, paraphrase what I said. Paraphrase, paraphrase. It's two phrases, paraphrases.
We think that there's a past and a future.
We do.
And that's what keeps us confused all the time. Is we always think that there's something
Grasping.
going to happen or something happened.
Yes. It's an illusion.
I'm also not sure about that.
I was worried there for a minute. Okay. Thank you, Sheldon. Anyone else like to say something? Any other questions? Online? Very good. Thank you so much.
We'll dedicate the merit in the back of your red chant books as our dedication. And would also like to remind everybody that we do have donation boxes in the hallway, and you can also donate online or mail us a check with snail mail.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-o san shi bu, chi-son bu sa mo ko sa. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.